You're now watching Sports Bettor's Paradise on the Bet Rivers Network.
All right, Jimmy, I'm Paul Stone talking about the Michigan games. Let's get right to them real quick. Michigan and Minnesota. How about the win in Ann Arbor? It's exciting. Was it high level? You know, I'm not real sure if that's two really good teams or that's just two, pretty good teams in a really exciting game. Michigan now 9.5, 38.5 against Minnesota. Michigan wins it despite only throwing for 32 yards. At the end, the USC inability to tackle allows Michigan to get that long busted play to set up for the game winner. Minnesota 2-2 after losing to Iowa 31-14 on the road. Michigan letdown spot here for Paul for the Wolverines.
I don't really think so. I think the fact, they've already lost one game decisively to Texas at home. I think they do have to guard, against, and I guess it's kind of a letdown spot just from the standpoint of coming off a big victory like that, emotional victory where you win in the late going. I'll kind of backtrack and say, they do have to keep their guard up. But I think they've got they've kind of got a second life here. They certainly salvaged their season or their playoff hopes anyway last week by driving 89 yards in 10 plays to beat Southern Cal 27-24. And as you mentioned, they only complete 7 passes for a total of 32 yards. So absolutely no passing game for the Wolverines and Alex Orji there in his first start. So now we have a home date against Minnesota. They're a team that, much like the Wolverines, they lean heavily on their defense, quite limited offensively. Michigan, they're only averaging a tick over 24 points a game in their first 4 games, and that includes a pair of group of 5 opponents. So that offense obviously struggling. They lack a passing game. They're relying heavily on the running game. So I'll admit it's a little bit dicey laying 9.5 points with Michigan, especially against at least a mid-level Power 4 type team. But I look at this game, and Minnesota's a team that ranks 95th in scoring offense. So they're not very prolific offensively, only 19.3 points per game. 93rd in passing yards, average less than 190 passing yards. So it's tough to beat the Wolverines and score against the Wolverines at the big house with no really downfield passing threat. So to rely heavily on your run game is not a recipe for success against Michigan, in my opinion. And they've played 2, solid Power 4 opponents this year, those being North Carolina and Iowa, and only scored a total of 36 points against those teams. So again, I don't think this is the best recipe for Minnesota's ailing offense to get well going up against Michigan. I think Minnesota is going to struggle to score points. So I like Michigan minus 9.5 over Minnesota.
All right, moving along quickly. No doubt if Iowa can beat Minnesota by 17, I think Michigan certainly can. Ohio State 24.5 over Michigan State. Michigan State 3-1, but man, they should have been 4-0. On the road, red bandana game against Boston College. 3 turnover margin. They lose it 4 turnovers to 1. At quarterback Aiden Childs, 3 of those interceptions. Man, he's only had 4 TDs and 7 interceptions this season. Inconsistencies there, but State was the better team. I think 24.5 at home at East Lansing. I'm impressed by Jonathan Smith and how much better they are than a lot of people anticipated. Give me the Spartans plus 24.5 at home.
Yeah, I'm not going to be involved in this game. I'm a little bit leery of Ohio State. They're the best team. If I was to pick one team to win the national title right now, I would pick the balanced Buckeyes. But as you said, Jonathan Smith, especially as an underdog, now 15-7 against the spread as an away underdog. Of course, he's a home underdog here, but as an away underdog, 15-7 against the spread during coaching stints at Oregon State and Michigan State. So it'll be interesting to see how competitive Michigan State can be on Saturday at home against the Buckeyes.
All right, Marshall, this line is going down a little bit from 5.5 to 3.5. 3.5, 54.5 right now. Bet Rivers over Western Michigan. Marshall, not totally embarrassed by the Buckeyes. Certainly not embarrassed by the Virginia Tech Hokies. I'll take the Thunder and Herd minus the 3.5 at home against the visiting Western Michigan Broncos.
Yeah, Western Michigan, they've missed out the last couple of years on making a bowl game, so an upset victory at Marshall would go a long way towards their potential bowl eligibility this season. I'm not going to be involved in this game either. But one thing to keep an eye on is that Western Michigan's running back Jalen Buckley. He had 1,003 rushing yards last season. Their most productive offensive player. He's missed the last 2 games for the Broncos, uncertain about his status on Saturday at Marshall. So keep an eye on whether Jalen Buckley's able to go for Western Michigan.
All right, Central Michigan at home hosting the Aztecs of San Diego State. Aztecs 0-3. I'm not sure if this is the worst team, the weakest San Diego State team that I've seen, but it probably is the weakest offense that I've seen. They are 2-1 to the under against an over team. Central Michigan 3-1 to the over. At Bet Rivers right now, Central Michigan 2.5 and 54.5 at home.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Aztecs' offense and their defense. Man, they have been kind of known for their defense the last 6 or 8 years, and their defense has really fallen off as well. Central Michigan, like Western Michigan, they've missed the bowl season the last couple of years, so they would enjoy a victory here to get closer to bowl eligibility. Their top player, again, a guy to look for in this game against the Aztecs for Central Michigan. Running back Marlon Lukes had 737 yards rushing last year, and then last week in their victory over Ball State, 37-34, he had 86 yards on 13 carries. So Central Michigan relying heavily on Lukes against San Diego State on Saturday.
Eagles of Eastern Michigan are 3-1. They are done with their non-conference competition. Now their conference opener against Kent State. 3-1, 4-0 against the spread are the Eagles. Our fellow friend Chris Andrews, veteran sportsbook odds maker for the South Point Las Vegas, calls Kent State his lowest power-rated team in his career. That's low. They are 0-4, back-to-back games where they were outgained by close to 600 yards. 718-66, 740-112 by Tennessee. Kent State is 0-4 straight up and 0-4 against the spread.
Yeah, Eastern Michigan, they could go to 4-1 with the victory here over Kent State. As you mentioned, a very struggling Kent State team. Eastern Michigan has victories over Massachusetts, Jacksonville State, and St. Francis of Pennsylvania, an FCS school. And then in Eastern Michigan's only loss, they were fairly competitive with Washington in the first half. They only trailed the Huskies 7-6 with 4 minutes left in the first half. Then the wheels came off a little bit, lost to Washington 30-9. No play here. If Kent State's, going to get a victory, it will be surprising. So Eastern Michigan probably going to 4-1 and getting ever so close to bowl eligibility this Saturday.
Eagle fans can scoop up all the tickets they won on that one. What I do like about their schedule, they play this one, that's 5 games in a bye. Then they have 4 more games in a bye, and then 3 games. So those byes are perfectly matched to kind of reset, get some healed up, some bumps and bruises along the way. So really nice start for the Eagles of Eastern Michigan this year. Looking at the Michigan teams, for Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott here on the Sports Bettor's Paradise on the Bet Rivers Network.